Okay, all right, time to get rolling. We got some fun stuff to do today. Okay, so if there are any communication access issues that arise, please do in a private chat send to your message to any one of us as the Deaf Action team. So the program will have a few parts. We'll start with introductions, and then we'll just give a brief history of our work for round 3, and then anti-racism, equity, and inclusion update. We will also share information about the budget and the focus and vision of our field. All right. So first, we'll start with introductions of our team members. I am Liam Esposito. Next on my screen, as I look, is Nancy. So Nancy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nancy Smith.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Amber, you're next.
Hello, everyone. This is Amber speaking. My name is Amber Hudson. I am from Deaf Hope, and I am part of the Deaf Action team. And it's exciting to see everyone. I miss everyone. So nice to see everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Najma.
Hello, everyone. Najma here. Najma Johnson. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am with Dawn in DC, and I've been part of the Deaf Action team, and I'm excited to be here.
Great. Thank you, Najma. And last but not least, Charity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charity Hope. I'm with VERA, the VERA Institute of Justice, and I am also part of the Deaf Action team. My pronouns are she and her, and I am so excited to be here today.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to start with just some brief history of the program. Many of you are already familiar with this information, but we have some new folks. And so we're just going to share how Deaf Action started, when, where, and how. So first of all, this project is funded by the Office of Violence Against Women, OVW. And I guess to start at the beginning a little bit, OVW has about 15 discretionary grant programs. So sexual assault, tribal, underserved, rural, disability, to name a few. And those programs are funded. Now, what happened is OVW, with the grant programs, organizations that receive those funds also get technical assistance, what we call TA, or training and technical assistance, to support the work that is funded by OVW. Now, for many years, TA was provided only by hearing programs. And there were disabled led program, deaf led programs, but they were still getting TA through hearing providers. There were no deaf TA providers or ASL provision in the least. So we, at that time, our field had a program called JDVNC, Justice for Deaf Victims National Coalition, now known as DAVC, Deaf Anti-Violence Coalition. So at that time, there were a lot of things happening. I think around 2013-ish, JDVC got together to discuss the future direction of that group. And folks who were there were members from our sister agencies, many of our sister agencies, a variety of representatives. And JDVC, which is now DAVC, is most well known for our conference, right? Our biennial conference where we would get our deaf fix and learn new tricks and just network and share best practices, among other things. So at that time, we had a retreat in Columbus, Ohio, and we got together to talk about the future directions of the work. At that time, JDVC had not gotten 501c3 status. So at that meeting, it was determined that that would be applied for. At the same time, Deaf Hope also was interested in applying for funding for the same grant that I mentioned, the gap that would met the gap of not having technical assistance provided by deaf and ASL fluent folks. So during those conversations about who would apply for that funding, and Liam has now froze. Oh, Amber says, darn it.
And Amber's saying, this is Amber speaking. Okay, well, I hope we can get Liam back. Crossing our fingers, but I'm happy to pick it up right where he left off to try and until he reconnects. So yeah, so during that time we had quite a discussion to figure out best fit and best needs. Oh, Liam's back. Okay. And Liam's saying this.
All right. Okay. Hey, everyone. Okay, so where did I freeze? Where was I when I froze?
And Sue is saying, wait, hold on. I see Liam now. Okay, okay.
Okay, so where was I when I froze? Where did I leave off?
Amber is saying, oh, who was applying?
Okay, yes. So Deaf Hope. So we were having this conversation. And at that time, right, the 501c3 status was not applied for. So there had to be, that status had to be attained before you would be eligible. So Deaf Hope decided to try for that funds with the support of JDMVC, and they wrote a letter of support and ultimately did not receive funding at that time. So at that point, we came together for more conversation and discussed with Nancy and Charity at Vera, and there's a little background about Vera Institute of Justice. Nancy has been in the field 15, 20-ish years, and Charity, not much less, around the same amount of time, and they have done a lot of work with disability and deaf communities. For example, and this just always sticks with me. It's a very touching story. I think it's critical. Some of you may know Julie Rems Smario, and is founding executive director of Deaf Hope. And Julie was at a conference training somewhere that Nancy was a part of with Vera Work. And Nancy and Julie began corresponding. And Nancy got the sense of who Julie was just as a person and their language use, et cetera. And when they met for the first time in person, Julie was the only deaf person in this particular space among hearing colleagues. And some interpreter issues arose. Interpreters were not staying for breaks. And as many of us know, those are important opportunities for networking and making connections with folks. Interpreters weren't available during those times. Interpreters often would show up late after lunch. Other kinds of issues that arose, just demeanor and energy and attitude toward Julie seemed to be very oppressive. And at this time, Nancy did not know any sign language, but was observing these kinds of dynamics and just had an instinct that something wasn't right. So Nancy approached Julie and just checked in on interpreting issues and access issues. And Julie was upfront and said, no, I feel excluded from these sessions. So Nancy closed down the entire event, said to all participants, we are not continuing this session because it is not accessible to all participants. What an amazing, I mean, it's just as a deaf person, it reminds me, you know, how often do we come across a person who has that understanding and recognition of inclusion. So just something I want to share. Nancy, over the years then has done this work, has invited some folks from our field to work with Vera, you know, work related to disability and deaf projects. Vera has hosted a national conference, I think it was in 2013. Yeah, somewhere around there in Vancouver, Washington. So through all of this work, I think it's become more and more visible how Vera has been involved and their position in national level work, their work with marginalized communities specifically. And after that meeting with JDVC and Deaf Hope that I was talking about, we decided to approach Vera and ask if there was a way we could meet with OVW to have an additional TA program that could be added that would increase our position in this work. So in the fall of, I guess it was September, October of 2014, Nancy, Julie, Amber, and myself went to Washington, DC and met with the director of OVW at that time, which was the last name Hudson, I think, and the associate director at that time. Many of you know the director and associate director at that time. They've supervised and overseen underserved grants and a number of grants, have been very involved with a lot of our work over the years. So we met with those two individuals and asked for an additional program to OVW offerings. And there was agreement, the need was recognized, and an RFP went out in 2015, February. We applied, and let's see, it was Vera who applied, and they led the efforts because we felt like Vera had the capacity. They had the infrastructure, they had the resources, human resource department, legal, fiscal departments, et cetera. You know, it's that 20 plus agencies out here as deaf sister agencies, we simply didn't have that and don't have that, right? Most of us are just working to survive and wearing many hats in our communities. So at that time, we decided Vera would lead this effort because of the capacity. At that time, ADWAS in Seattle, Washington, also advocacy services for deaf abused victims was a part of that, Deaf Hope. The three agencies applied together. Funding was awarded, $600,000 for 3 years. And we started in October of 2015. We started with the work, and that was the first round consisting of 3 years. The kinds of things we did were just getting a pulse of the community, which we called a needs assessment, trying to understand the landscape, what issues, what challenges existed, what did programs need support in. So we did that needs assessment, and from there developed a strategic plan for how we would address those needs. So in the first round, that's what we did. We established monthly webinars. They tended to be the third Thursday of every month. And then the fourth Thursday, we would follow up with a networking meeting where we visioned, and at the time, you know, we were still figuring out platforms and virtual kinds of meetings and what was the most accessible. We ultimately landed with Zoom because there were so many cool features, but there were still many challenges also. So we learned our way there. Webinars, we weren't able to have participants. However, we could have Zoom meetings and allowed for participants. So we navigated our learning curve with those events. And then later we had critical conversations or conversations and connections rather. And that was every Thursday. Where we would have different events. So we had these conversations and connections, webinars, and then the networking meetings. And then we had site visits also. Okay, just taking a minute to check in here. Oh, my internet is unstable. Does everybody see me? Can everybody see me? And people are saying, yeah, we see you fine. Oh, everybody can see me okay?
Sue is saying now I can only see Liam and Amber. I can't see, oh, I actually can't see Amber and Liam.
Okay, does
I have-
everybody see me.
I have 4 pictures, people on the right side. I don't know why. I see the ASL interpreter. I see Abigail and I see Maggie, but they're covering Amber and Liam. How do I take off these 4 folks because I can't see Liam signing? How do I move these folks down to the bottom so that they're not covering people? Now I see Amber. Liam is very tiny. I can't see Liam. Okay. Now Amber, I can't see Aaron. I
Okay,
hate
this is Liam.
technology. I hate technology. I really do.
Okay, let me finish my summary, and then I'm going to log off and reboot and join in when I turn it over to somebody else. So, so we did site visits as well. Customized TA, which means we provided TA needs for each organization based on their specific needs. We had a 40-hour advocacy training that we hosted. Well, shoot.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone can see me. This is Amber signing. So, and Raylene saying, sorry, Amber, can you hold? We're just gonna do an interpreter switch, and now it's Aaron. Great, perfect, great. Sue, I completely agree with you in terms of technology. It's a love-hate relationship. So I get that it's a struggle sometimes. And at the same time, it's like nice to be able to connect with folks around the country, but at the same time, it's not always compatible for every situation. So we'll wait a little bit until Liam gets back. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and pick up where he left off. As many of you already know, we have been doing so many items and activities just in our first and second round of the TA process. We have provided many conferences, primarily focusing on transformative justice, as well as other conferences focusing on DV advocacy training for a whole week where folks can get together and offer new and support each other and having new deaf advocates. We've also provided one-on-one TA support. And what that really means is just being able to exchange resources and be able to socialize and support one another, and to be able to look at, a network and look at the different challenges that our varying organizations experience and go through. That's one thing that I really did observe in my 20 years of working with Deaf Hope is we do feel that sometimes we work in silos, we work alone. And the truth is that we need more space to be able to exchange and learn from one another and to be able to be in that space. And so I've been honored to just be part of this process in the last 5 years, the first round, the second round, to be able to learn from all of you and to be able to do some information sharing, to be able to establish a website and maybe kind of have an informational hub. So that's been really great. And we also, have been able to do in-person, if you will, on-site visits with more intense support, really being able to work with organizations in person. The TA project itself has allowed us the opportunity to really cover the costs as well, to offer that level of support for one another. And Deaf Hope has had folks come in and experience support in terms of getting consultations and being able to offer support in ways such as how to improve our financial management system, such as also elevating and working better to enhance our relationships within the community, how to make sure it's more community-based services and the like. Just to give you an idea of what we have been offering, that's what we have been doing. And so what Liam will be talking about a little bit more, and what was next on his agenda, is that we are fortunate and very excited to be talking about our next steps, our next round, our third round, our third cycle, if you will, which is really exciting. So I really want to share a little bit more about that and what's to come. I think what's really important too is that I pause as well and maybe give an opportunity for any comments, questions, maybe want to clarify any points that we've made so far, maybe our history in terms of how we arrived to today and where we are this year. A lot has happened over the course of many years, and I see that Liam is back and has rejoined us, so I'm so excited. I'll now go ahead and pause. If anyone has any questions or comments, please do raise your hand or click the virtual hand if you'd like, or type it in the chat. We will definitely see that, and we would love to welcome that. And then we will spotlight you, and I'll pause now for a moment if anyone has any thoughts or questions or comments. Just giving folks a moment. I know it's a lot of information, a lot to think about. So just want to make sure everyone's digesting okay. Liam, would you like to take it back over? Would you like to share a little bit about our third round? Just kidding. I lost Liam again. Shucks. Okay. Nope. Let me spotlight. There we go. Liam, hi. Welcome back. We were just talking briefly about the pros and cons of technology while you were gone. But I did also just mention
Today of all days, it has been fine until today.
of course, that's technology for you. It's okay. Did you want to get back to explaining the success of the third round and of the grant and our plans are regarding that? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'm happy to if the internet supports that desire.
Sure.
All right. So our third round includes Vera, Institute of Justice, as the lead recipient and 2 subrecipients. One is Dawn in Washington, D.C., which Najma is joining the team. And the second is Deaf Hope, with Amber continuing in these efforts. So this third round, we decided to maintain some of our projects and at the same time add some new pieces. We are going to continue with customized TA, which means that any needs organizations have, we will provide support for those specific areas. We also are including learning engagements in this new round. Before we had webinars, and what we noticed was people would attend, however, the discussion wasn't as interactive as we would like. People wanted to really process and talk about application of the information that was discussed in webinars. So we are going to do quarterly half-day conferences, if you will, on a variety of topics. Those engagements will be similar to this, more conversational in nature and less presentation, less monologue, hopefully more interactive. We find that based on feedback, many folks appreciate that approach much more than webinar type events. We also are going to develop a resource hub. And on the website, there will be listings of a variety of information, resources, and that will be from our creation, as well as it will include other resources that other folks are doing. We want to include just everything that we have access to. We also have a 40-hour, well, we hosted the 40-hour advocacy training in person, and due to the pandemic, we were challenged and not able to host it again in person. So what we've been doing has been working hard the last few months in particular, and a special thanks to Amber for the work on that. We have developed an online advocacy curriculum that basically took the content that we spent a week on in Seattle and has converted it to an online format. So this is an opportunity for folks who are newly hired to be able to take this training at any time, right when they are hired. They don't have to wait for it to be offered once a year in person. It will be also a great refresher for folks who have been in the field for a number of years. So part of this third grant funding also will support specialized focus on trainings in terms of cohorts that want to process and move through those trainings together and process the curriculum and all of that, so that it really can support our direct service that we are providing. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Amber.
Great. This is Amber signing. I think, as Liam was just mentioning, it's a change to this third round to add Dawn to our team, and having Najma with us. We are just so thrilled and excited about that addition, to be able to have Najma's perspective and their expertise, excuse the interpreter, and to be able to, I'll actually turn off to Najma if they would like to, in terms of what drew you to this work and Deaf Action and how you were connected to this round. Would you like to share a little bit, Najma? Najma saying yes, that'd be great. And this is Najma saying, hello, I just want to make sure I have the interpreters. Okay, great. Hello. Oh, hello, everyone. This is Najma. This experience has been really incredible. I also just want to emphasize that my experience of working with the Deaf Action team was really, I mean, I was a new executive director, just working with Dawn. And as many people know, I am not a quote unquote traditional advocate, if you will, in this DSV world. So many folks know that the first challenge was really, how can we help each other bring change and the journey of, against domestic violence and sexual assault. So what does that look like? What does that mean? And learning from various people in the community, a lot of hearing organizations are so far ahead. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, how can we make sure the deaf community is on the same page and at the same pace? And so that's where, Deaf Action Team came in. And it's sad because many of us who are deaf often feel autism, feels like we can't ask information or have access to things. And that's where the Deaf Action Team is really incredible in the sense of, well, listen, I don't like the word allyship. I'm not a fan of that word, but I do see where Deaf Action Team has taken part and has highlighted using their voice and has been able to give those who don't have a voice to be able to have a presence there and to bring our concerns to the table to actually see change come about in the community. For many of us deaf and hard of hearing folks, when we do partnerships, we talk about needs, but with Deaf Action Team, my experience has been, I've seen a lot of different dynamics of oppression within our work. And how do we approach that? How do we broach that? And traditionally, what I've learned is that, okay, well, we try to support our survivors as best as we can. And we just try and it's almost in a passive way. Okay, well, we have to do the best that we can. And we're thinking, wait a minute. So the truth is that we work with trauma-informed people. And what that means is that we want to make sure, and Najma's screen is frozen. Me, Najma saying me, I'm frozen. You're better now. Raylene saying, what was the last thing I saw? And Aaron saying transformed work. What was the last thing I said? Trauma-informed work. Aaron is signing. Okay. So Najma saying, we are part of trauma-informed work. And what that entails is that we have to make sure that our colleagues and our staff are aware of the process of what that means and to be transparent with not just our clients, but how much of that information we're sharing with them. And I think that's where we all came in. I mean, it's not just this. I mean, every state has their own culture in terms of how they approach this work. And so sometimes there are many errors and we vicariously follow, or we vicariously experience it, or we just follow what's been set up, but then we're not really doing anything that's community centric. And so what we're doing is we're doing a lot of survivor-centric work. And so we're doing survivor-centric work, and we need to do survivor-centric home in our homes, in our regions, and what trends are happening with everything going on with immigration, with Black Lives Matter happening all over the United States. Other states are responding differently than others, and how they're handling immigration and the pros and cons to that. So are we paying attention to what's going on in our local regions and our teams, and how are we responding to what's happening socially? My role with the Deaf Action Team has really been more accountability. I mean, obviously, Liam and Amber are white, right? Let's just name it. And Amber is a CODA who's had hearing access. Liam has had language access, and he is bilingual and able to have access to various information. And so when we talk about accountability, I say it's beautiful, yes, but I think it's also a painful process. The reason that it's a beautifully painful process is because we have to build confidence and trust our work and understanding the various levels of this work. As Najma, I look at Deaf Hope as really progressive. And it's like, well, it's a small organization for sure. And so that means we need to be able to communicate with one another. and we have to, and our assumptions actually harm one another. And so for the Deaf Action team to kind of undo the harm to one another is really essential. And so it's how do we best support each other with that? And I'm not gonna lie, we've had many great ideas. We have many amazing movements and processes, but there's going to be harm that's going to happen, and a lot of assumptions and not clarifying information, not being clear with our expectations. And I think the hard part is can we ask what is the expectation? And we don't always do that. And so I think now with the second round, with that third round, I'm assuming from assumptions is that we want to be able to put everything out on the table. And that's a good assumption to make. What can we do as collectively, as a group, regardless of the states that we come from and where we live, the various situations that come up in our respective areas, what can we do to support one another and not work in silos? I'm here for any personal questions. I'm here to offer any resources. I work with Liam, I work with Amber. It's a very transparent process, whether it's with Deaf Action Team or if I'm talking with Shane, with Nancy or with Charity. So, as a Black, deaf, blind, trans person, I recognize that there's a lot of whiteness spaces being occupied. But if you know me, I am not a confrontational person. I can hold white people accountable. I am capable of doing that if they are also willing to create change along with me and co-create that space. So I'm also available for any questions or comments and to work in partnership. So thank you for letting me share just a little bit about my experience.
And this is Amber. Najma, I'm so grateful and appreciative that you're naming our team and naming where we are. I think, yeah, it's something that we on the team have been discussing and truthfully haven't done well. So I'm just really, I'm grateful that you have named this. Our work in the DVSV field in general is, we have the shared goal of reducing harm, reducing violence, and we often cause it ourselves in different ways, too often. And we have to not only keep our attention on the community and what's happening out there in the community, what anti-violence work needs, but we also need to be watching ourselves and each other, right? And we have to have this transparent process where we make mistakes, where we cause harm, and where we can do better. So Najma, I am with you. And I also am not a fan of the term allyship. I think we need to just really focus on me, right? We each need to focus on our own work and not looking at how we can be allies, right? But focusing on our own work and how we're going to dismantle white supremacy is being committed to our work and our individual work and how we're not living up to our own commitments. Our goal is to just stay on this journey, to keep on this journey. And I see somebody has made a comment. Damara has commented. I don't know. And Damara, would you like to sign this? If you want to, bring your camera up. But Damara says, for me as a Black advocate, this is what I really need to hear. I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Najma. Yes, and thank you, Damara, for that comment. So that was in the chat, just to clarify. And if anybody would like to make a chat comment or raise their hand, our goal is to have an inclusive conversation. Najma has made themselves available for further conversation. And I think myself and Liam, I'm speaking for Liam, I don't mean to, but I can confidently say we are very open to people's feedback and to have difficult conversations. And if we can't have difficult conversations here, then how are we going to have those conversations in the community? Liam, would you like to share something? Yes, this is Liam. And first, I want to talk about the technical piece. First, I think if we have six screens, it's better. So can we have the deaf interpreters off while we're doing this? And Najma is saying, I only have one device, so the deaf interpreters need to stay on screen. Okay. All right. Liam says, I just wanted to check in on that. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So I'm thinking about and looking back to our Deaf Action meetings, right? We meet weekly for 2 hours. So it's every Monday, 2-hour meetings. And those meetings consist of me, Nancy, Charity, Amber, on the previous team. And we had ADWAS members. Now we also have Dawn, Najma from Dawn. And reflecting on our work, there has been a lot of internal strife at times. The strife has been around pushing back to the system, pushing back on the system. As I mentioned earlier, Vera has a long history of being connected at a national level, and they've received millions of dollars through federal funds, through OBW, OBC, and other programs. Their level of access and awareness of how federal funding works is much deeper than my own personally. So one thing I have been learning in this field over the 21 years of my career as a board member, as an advocate, executive director, trainer, consultant, etc., I have seen many changes. One thing I would say is we have had conversations around race and racism, equity, inclusion in our meetings every Monday. I would say almost every week, we have some type of conversation. And sometimes those conversations become heated where, we're just pushing for more and pushing for more while Nancy and Charity are also trying to help us to see how we can work within the parameters, right? Within what's doable and allowed within a federal framework. We get funding and there are certain things we have to do. There are expectations and rules that we have to follow to use that money, and with that comes limitations. For example, the 4 years under previous administration, there were many things we were not allowed to do, we weren't allowed to say, and we would have meetings to talk about why we couldn't use the word power, why we couldn't say white supremacy. I mean, just to name a couple, it was very frustrating. And then we would have conversations around, okay, well, we feel a certain level of complicity, right? By even accepting these funds. And we would all acknowledge this. Yes, there is a level of complicity, a complicity to a system that is white supremacist. So we try to figure out how we can navigate these limitations and still push for change. And I just want to share that it has been extremely frustrating because I want to see more change and I want to see it faster. As a person without much patience, I have to be reminded often, right, this by Nancy and Charity, around how to focus on what we can do, what is allowable. So I think I want to turn it over to Nancy and Charity for a little bit, just to shine some light for folks to understand the complexities of federal funding limitations and what we do have, specifically in terms of racial equity work. So Nancy or Charity? And Christina is going to be providing ASL for Nancy.
Hi, everyone. This is Nancy. Liam, first off, I think that was just a beautiful kind of window into the conversations that we have as a team when we meet. And there's a couple of things I wanted to say. One is that a lot of what Najma and Liam and Amber have shared in terms of our own work around anti-racism and accountability has really aligned not only with the conversations that we've been contributing to in the Deaf Action team, but there are similar conversations that we are having within the broader organization of VERA. And as an organization and as a sort of center or department within that organization, we are considered by many to be a mainstream organization. We historically have been white led and very white dominated as an organization. And that is true for our center as well. And, for myself, I am a white person. I'm also a hearing person, doing this work. And, we, are very much committed to anti-racism and have been doing a lot of work within the organization to really help us identify the ways in which white supremacy is sort of baked in to our organization as white people in, our way of thinking, and how that affects how we show up and how we do the work. And we have been focused on making a number of changes, and we have so much more to do in terms of the changes and the journey that we're on. And it's something that we will, especially as white people, for myself, will always be on. And that is also true for the work that I do around all of the privileges that I have as a hearing person as well, and in thinking about how to practice anti-autism and phonocentrism as well. But one of the things I would want to lift up that, Liam shared a little bit about is this really difficult place that we find ourselves in around funding. Less than 1% of money from private philanthropy goes to address gender-based violence. The federal government is the #1 funder of survivor advocacy work. And, there is so much work we can do for survivors that is not funded, but we also know that we need to be resourced to do this work. We want to really support advocates doing this work, provide living wages. We know that this costs money. And right now, the federal government is the #1 source of funding. The federal government puts in about $3.5 billion a year into survivor advocacy work. And you can't find anything close to that in private philanthropy. There was one foundation, the Novo Foundation, that committed to addressing gender-based violence, and they shut down their department that funds gender-based violence work last year. So it creates this real dilemma where we know that federal funding comes from a system that is has been created in its foundations in white supremacy and in racism, and it is the money that we have to support work that we do. And so one of the things that we try to do is see how far we can push the limits of the federal funding that we have. And, Liam shared the last 4 years under the previous administration, they were incredibly hard. I've gotten federal funding since 2005, and I've never experienced anything like the censorship and really the targeting that people experienced, in particular, Black and Brown people doing this work by that administration, including staff who work in the Department of Justice, but certainly, advocates. And, as Liam said, there were words we couldn't say: power, privilege, racism, and many, 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 times we thought about, should we keep taking this money? And it's something that I think we ask ourselves all the time. What impacts are we able to have? What harms are we committing by taking this money? And where do we land? How do we make sense of that? And one of the things that I've learned a lot from working at Vera is that, we cannot do the work we want to do solely by being reliant on this government state funding. And so one of the things that I am very committed to do personally is to work with private philanthropists, people working in foundations, and really using Vera's connections. Our president, Nick Turner, has amazing connections in private philanthropy. He is an amazing fundraiser, and he has offered to bring those connections to me. And I am very much committed to using those connections to really make the case in private philanthropy of why their money is needed to support deaf advocacy. Why is it needed to support people with disabilities doing this work? Yes, the government has all this money, but you can't do anything that's restorative or transformative, let alone anything that is truly getting at the root causes, that's really getting at racism. So I'm very much committed to, first making that case in private philanthropy, and then getting that money that is much more flexible, much more unrestricted, to be able to do the kind of work that I think, everyone here is really committed to doing and trying to do, with money that is just, frankly, set up with all sorts of rules that prevent us from being able to do that.
And this is Liam. I think I want to make sure folks have time to ask questions, make comments. Before we open up, though, I would like to follow up a little bit to Nancy's comments related to funding. A lot of folks have said, okay, $600,000 is a lot of money. Where does that money go? Charity, would you mind offering some or shining some light on that and how the money is spent there?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi again, everyone. This is Charity. As Liam and others have mentioned, this is a $600,000 two-year award. I believe it was also mentioned that Vera is the recipient of that award. So this project is housed within the Vera Institute of Justice. And just one thing to note before I get into some numbers. Vera has a financial cost structure that we are required to use for any projects that are housed within it. And I'll share a little bit about that as we go through, but that applies to the Deaf Action Project as well. So our number one cost category, where the money goes for this project, is for personnel, for the time of the folks that you see, the team members you see here on the screen. And I'm going to break this down in two ways. I'm going to share the Vera staff cost, and then also the cost for Deaf Hope and Dawn. So personnel is about 70% of the award, so very much the bulk of the award. Vera staff cost total $256,000. This includes salary and fringe. So again, thinking back to that Vera financial cost structure, Vera offers a fringe package that includes state unemployment insurance, FICA, FICA, and Medicare cost, workers' comp, short-term disability. Those are all sort of the standard required cost. And then also Vera provides health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, pension, some additional supplemental disability insurance, and accidental death and dismemberment insurance. So the salary cost of $256,000 covers salary and those fringe benefits. So for Vera staff working on the project, this includes some of Liam's time, 60% of Liam's time to provide training and support. This includes Raylene's time, about 20% of Raylene's time for interpreter coordination, interpreting, and other support. It includes a little bit of my time, about 15% of my time to do that behind the scenes, management, reporting, all that good stuff. It includes Rada Aris Diaz. She's not here today. She sort of is our meeting and events planner and provides admin support. It covers a little bit of her time, 7% of her time, to provide support on contracting and invoicing. And then a little bit of Nancy's time, 5% of Nancy's time for that strategic visioning piece. The other personnel costs are for Dawn and Deaf Hope. In total, Dawn and Deaf Hope have $160,000 over the course of this award. We've been joined by my assistant. None of her time is covered on this award, but it really should be. We've got Gertie here to say hi. So Dawn and Deaf Hope, $160,000. This covers about 45% of Najma's time and 45% of Amber's time to provide training and support. Okay, the second cost category is for consultants. So this would be for hearing and deaf interpreters. This could also be for additional trainers for our learning engagements. And we have $76,000 set aside for consultants, and this is about 13% of the award. Our third category is for travel. We have $36,000 set aside for travel. It works out to be about 7% of the total project cost. And this includes $7,500 for OVW for a required travel set aside. So on a lot of OVW TA projects, anyone applying for them have to set this money aside to attend OVW required meetings. And it also includes possible travel for the team to have planning meetings or site visits once we get past COVID. The fourth category we have is a miscellaneous category. It's about $3,000. It works out to be 0.5% of the total project. And this is for miscellaneous subscriptions, our website.
And Charity,
Oh,
Charity, this was Stacy. I missed the amount. Was it
Oh.
3,000?
3,000, yeah, 3,000. And this is for miscellaneous subscriptions, our website domain name, a little tiny bit of, the platform that hosts the advocacy training. So sort of some of those technology costs. And the final cost category are back to sort of the idea that we are working within Vera, and their financial structure are indirect cost. You may have heard this referred to as a negotiated indirect cost rate or an IDC rate. And this totals about $68,000 and covers infrastructure cost at Vera. This includes human resources support. So this is support around hiring, managing benefits, timesheet, our timesheet system. It also includes support from our fiscal department and our budgeting department. And this is, everything from processing payroll to managing payments to subrecipients and our consultants, making sure we're following the DOJ financial regulations for subrecipient monitoring, and our fiscal reporting to DOJ also. It also includes things like support from our legal department. Vera also has a legal department and a general counsel and a whole host of attorneys that help us with contracting, specialized support, for example, when we're researching requirements for different projects, the virtual deaf support line, just sort of anything that we might need and totally understanding the legal side of things. And then, other stuff like audit costs and all those good things. So that is the breakdown of the budget.
Thank you, Charity. Thank you. This is Liam signing. And I know there's several questions or requests for a break. So let's take a 5-minute break. But before we do so, there is one more part of the conversation that we have. Nancy will lead this and Charity already mentioned part of Nancy's time is for her strategic vision. So Nancy is going to make some comments about that in our work. And then after that, okay, this is Liam. All right, hello everyone. Now that we finished our break, we're going to continue our discussion. And as Charity just mentioned before the break, in terms of the $600,000 and cost structure and how expenses are broken down. While Charity was explaining that, she mentioned that Nancy's time is focused on strategic visioning and really specifically looking at the future direction of our program. And that's going to be the next part of our conversation. This field is constantly evolving and growing and just very dynamic. So Nancy is going to offer us some thoughts about that and the vision and what's coming up. What's going to be happening in the next few years with anti-violence work and how that's going to impact survivors and programs. So I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
Thanks, Liam. As Liam said, this is.
Oh, and this is Amber. Can you just wait 1 minute? 1 minute. I'm moving the spotlight. Okay. All right, Nancy, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you. This is Nancy, and as Liam said, our work and the movement that we work in is constantly growing, constantly changing, and it is also a time of big changes and growth for us within the Center on Victimization and Safety at the Vera Institute of Justice. And I wanted to take this opportunity to share some news and to make an announcement. And that is, as Charity just mentioned, the work that we do is currently part of the Vera Institute of Justice. And Vera is a pretty big organization. There's about 350 employees, and Vera works in a lot of different areas. Vera works to end mass incarceration, to address issues related to juvenile justice. Vera has work that is around promoting immigration justice. And then a really small part of Vera is the work that we do at the Center on Victimization and Safety. And most of the work that we have done has been around really centering people with disabilities in anti-violence work and also supporting deaf-led advocacy through projects like Deaf Action. And what I wanted to share with everyone here today is that we have decided that we are going to spin off our work from Vera, so that we will create a new independent national nonprofit organization that continues to really address violence and abuse of people with disabilities and deaf people, and also the harms and inequities that people with disabilities and deaf people face because of the criminalization of those communities, and also the incarceration of people with disabilities and deaf people, and in particular, Black and Brown folks from those communities. And I've actually been at Vera for 18 years. My 18-year anniversary was last Friday. So Vera has been a really amazing place for us to grow this work. We've learned so much from Vera in terms of how they do their work and how they fundraise, and just so many things. But we feel like we're at a point where the work has really grown, and where we can have an even greater impact by standing as an independent organization and really having an opportunity to create an organization from the ground up that reflects the values that are just so critical that we've been talking about before we took a break, that are so critical given the work that we do, and to really have all aspects of the organization be organized around supporting this mission. So Charity mentioned when she was describing the budget that, we've had to use a cost structure that was set up by Vera, and it's really in support of Vera's overall mission. And we want to be able to have a cost structure that supports the work that we do directly, and that allows for, the majority of the money to really support the work, and to really make improvements and change for survivors. And so we're really excited about this. The goal is for us to be an independent organization by June of 2022. So we have a year to build that new organization. And our hope is really to create an organization that is a home for Deaf Action. And, as I mentioned earlier, we are committed to raising money to support the work of Deaf Action, and to really grow that work so that Deaf Action can become a national hub for deaf-led advocacy, and cannot be have the same constraints that we have just focusing on with federal funding, but can really, have change and have an impact on a really big scale across the country. So we're really excited about that. And I really wanted to make this announcement today. This is the first time that we're sharing this news publicly and in a forum like this. And as deaf advocates, you're incredibly important to the work that we do. And, we really want this organization to really, be a home for everyone, and to really be created and driven by communities. And so I also wanted to make this announcement today, because I want to make an invitation. We would love for you to help shape who it is that we are becoming in this organization. And I don't have all the picture of what the next year is going to look like in terms of launching this organization. But we do have an opportunity coming up in the next couple days where we would love all of you to participate in. We're going to be releasing a survey that we'd like to include all of you on to get your perspectives and get your expertise and your wisdom about what's important in the sort of shaping of this new organization. And so I really hope that you'll take a few minutes to participate in that survey, because it's just the beginning of an opportunity and an invitation for everyone to participate in creating this organization. But we would really, really appreciate all of your wisdom to shape us. And part of what we're doing through that survey is figuring out a new name. The Center on Victimization and Safety is not who we want to be. It is not reflective of who we are today. And we're super excited just about that one piece and so many other things, but being able to have a new name that really resonates with the work that we do, that resonates with you all. And that is a really powerful name in American Sign Language as well. So we would love to include all of you in helping us figure that out.
So this is Liam signing. In the chat, there have been some questions, and one I see is, will the new spinoff work with HERD, that organization? And before we answer that, I think I want to go to Najma. Najma, maybe you could also help us to understand who HERD is and what the work is that they do. And Najma saying, am I frozen? I don't, okay. Liam, so Erin is repeating the information because Erin was frozen. Actually, Liam, would you repeat the information? Yes, this is Liam. So thank you, Nancy, for that announcement that, you know, you are, the deaf community is the first to know. So thank you, because as you know, deaf people are often the last to get the information. So I'm very grateful for your sharing of this information with us and all of our colleagues. In the chat, there were some questions that came up, and one specific question was inquiring if the spinoff is going to collaborate with HERD, helping educate and advance the rights of deaf folks. And before you respond, or we respond to that, I would like to turn it over to Najma and see if they can help us just understand more about who and what HERD is and their work. So Najma, would you be able to provide us some information?
Yes. Okay, just setting up my screen. Okay, can you see me? Okay, great. Okay, HERD is an organization that is a community-based organization, and they help to communicate and advance the work in the community. That is really, it's the only one that is a 100% abolitionist framework where they really want to abolish the prison system. And so one thing that's special about them, I'm very careful. I want to be careful about signing this because this is not anti-government. It has nothing to do with government. It's just the fact that the funding from government has limited the needs of those who are incarcerated. And so, you know, people who are incarcerated, those who are in jail, those who are in confinement, you know, deaf and disabled people is the focus of HERD and how they want to make things more possible. So video phones, making calls, additional services. reentry levels, being able to, and there are so many different personal beliefs in terms of punitive. And when I sign this, I actually mean the legal system. So when I'm signing that, I'm not saying punitive, I'm just saying the legal system. They are not helping our deaf communities, and many of us know that. So many deaf people are language deprived, and because of that language deprivation, many deaf people are being punished and being criminalized, and that's the kind of system that we have. And so the work that they are doing, oftentimes folks are saying, those who are incarcerated, they've also experienced, of course, some kind of trauma, and that's where we come in. There was a time when folks experience any domestic violence, or we were supporting survivors, we forget that those who are incarcerated are also survivors, and so therefore we're not allowed to work with them. People who have experienced trauma and violence within the prison system and within the various legal systems will say, oh, they're not survivors. But the best clean way I can say this, I guess, is that they are the only organization who's doing real work to reduce trauma and violence within the deaf and disabled community. And the clean version is, yes, it is to focus on abolitionist work and to focus on the prison complex system, and to make sure that, there are two different comments that are made. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm not sure which version you want, but I'm hoping that I gave the more professional, cleaner version. Because the truth is that so many of us, well, let me give you a little bit of context. So many of us within this transformative justice work, when people come into our communities who have experienced harm or have harmed others or have experienced sexual violence, folks are often saying, well, sorry, no, you're out. We can't focus on you, and we just focus on the survivor. And okay, and that's okay. But you'll see, though, oftentimes the survivors are the ones who do want the partner who did cause harm to also receive support, to also be able to get support from the community, so that their family members who may be incarcerated or those who have harmed them also are receiving support as well. And other folks will say, no, sorry, you're the survivor, we focus on you. And so there we go again, taking away the rights of those who have the right to have access to be able to have restorative justice. And to go back to quote unquote mainstream society. And so there's so much decision making and gatekeeping on, well, how much violence did you cause and to whom? And so again, we need to do a collective, holistic approach in doing this work. And so who do we need to look at? The system. I'm talking so much, I'm going to stop right now. Did I answer your question? I don't know if I answered it. I want to make sure I did.
Yes. And I'm just waiting for the interpretation there. Okay. Yes, this is Liam. And I want to apologize earlier for when I started signing and the interpreters were still signing. So I was asked to wait until the interpretation is done before I begin. So I'm trying to practice that and do better. Okay. Yes. So thank you, Najma. I appreciate your candid response in terms of HEARD. And yeah, it is the only agency that is authentically, I think, doing the work around trauma-informed work in terms of the harm that has been done in our community. So I agree with you 1000%. Nancy, now I'd like to turn it over to you to respond to that question, if the spinoff will be collaborating with HEARD.
This is Nancy. We would love to collaborate with HEARD, and also just to say a couple things about that. As we kind of launch this new organization, one of the things that we want to do is to create a mission for the organization that does not, and a role for the organization that does not duplicate the amazing work that organizations like HEARD, for example, are doing. And so we would, absolutely partner with HEARD, collaborate with HEARD and other organizations that are doing this type of work. And one role that I think we will be playing is to help resource organizations like HEARD with money and other support that they need to do their work. So, there are tremendous systemic barriers to the organizations that are qualified to do the work, like HEARD and every organization in this room, to get money. And it's racism and autism and all sorts of oppression are built into our funding systems. And that's certainly true for federal funds, for state funding, but it's also true for private philanthropy. And there are so many barriers that programs like HERD and like all of you face in terms of being able to connect with the people who have the money and get money from them. And so one of the roles we want to play is to be sort of like kind of a intermediary between, and to really help get the people who have the money to understand why they need to give money to programs like HERD and to programs like all of you, and to help them create an easier way for you to get the money. So I would just say that, that's a role that we have played with government. We have really worked with the Department of Justice, in particular, the Office on Violence Against Women, to leverage the money that they get to go to programs like those of you who are in this room. And so, there's a lot of things that we've been doing behind the scenes, and we've had success in doing that in the federal government. And Liam might want to share just some of those recent things that have happened, but we want to apply that same work we've done with the federal government into private philanthropy so that places like HERD and like all of you have money that you need to do the work that you're doing. Liam, do you want to share a little bit about some of what's been happening in sort of the federal budget, and in particular, President Biden and Vice President Harris's budget request?
Sure. This is Liam signing. Yes, thank you, Nancy. Yes, thank you so much for commenting and responding to that. And also to add, HERD, along with many other organizations or leaders within the Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Asian communities, feel strongly conflicted to work with folks and organizations that are receiving federal funds. So that's going to be a challenge on all of our parts to figure out how to navigate that. But I do think we need to have more conversation together about how we can develop these future collaborations. It's very important. Abolishment is the way. It is. So if we really want to talk about liberation and Black humanity, we must continue this fight. So as Nancy mentioned with the president's budget, first I'd like to provide some context. Over the last few years, the Vera Institute of Justice has received funding for OVW grants provision that can look at the needs of the deaf community for anti-violence work and how we can assure that the gaps are met. So by that, we have about 20-ish agencies, right? And geographically, that has changed. That translates to about 71% of our country being without deaf-led anti-violence programs. 71% of the country does not have access to these services. What are we going to do about the survivors, the deaf survivors that are in those areas within that 71%? And that's where the funding and the grant, we got a grant that looked at the potential of setting up a virtual service line, which Roberta, who is now with Dawn, was part of the Vera team, very critical part of that team, and played a role in developing that proposal for OVW to look into meeting the needs of survivors in these areas, especially rural areas, in the Deep South, et cetera. So Roberta, Nancy, Charity were a part of that team and hosted sessions. And I think a few of you people were in some of those roundtable meetings. There was one in Washington, I think, and the Washington on the West Coast and Washington, D.C., to give feedback and just to share ideas. And the final proposal was submitted to OVW. And in that proposal, the need was expanded on of what is needed for this virtual service line. So $10 million was asked for 5 years. And there were different phases outlined within this proposal to establish a national deaf service line project for deaf survivors of domestic and sexual violence and stalking, et cetera. And the exciting news is just recently, a few weeks ago, the president's budget with the U.S. Department of Justice announced the president's budget, and it included $10 million for deaf services. So that means that if that budget is approved going forward, we will have an RFP that goes out, and that is very exciting. Nancy, anything to add to that?
This is Nancy. I think that was beautiful. No, I think it's incredibly exciting. It was amazing to see that the president's budget includes a request for $10 million for deaf-led advocacy services. I think that is huge and very exciting, and the impact that can have is huge.
Yes, yes. And this is Liam signing again. Roberta, can you pop your camera on? We got to see your face and give you the credit and applause due. Yes. Okay, we got a spotlight. Wait, spotlight Roberta. Oh.
That is the best. That just made my day. I mean, the goosebumps. Oh my gosh. I mean, coming from the heart, I mean, everyone invested their time, their thoughts, their energy. I mean, I could not do this without any of you. I mean, that would be just an impossible task. I mean, everyone and the brainstorming process. I mean, this is like my baby. I mean, I wanted this to be successful and to include, to have something that doesn't have any harm, and to include everybody and everyone's intersectional identities, and to be doing this for 2 years. I mean, I was thinking, man, wow, I hope that someone's going to pick up this project and just, go with the wind. And I can't believe, like, wow, that's exciting. And I can't wait to see what the next phase will be. What are the next steps? I'm curious. I can't wait to see for this to grow. So yes, so exciting. So exciting.
Yes, let's show Roberta some love. Yes, good. Thank you so much, Roberta, for all of your beautiful, amazing hard work with this project. You played a huge role in making this a reality. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So with that, we have about 20 minutes remaining. We'd like to open it up for Q&A. One question on the chat that I think Bea asked a while ago, we can start with that. BB asked is, will there be any in-person trainings coming up? So Nancy or Charity, could either one of you comment on that?
Sure. This is Charity. Well, we're putting together the...
Oh, and Charity, one second. This is Amber. Just give me interpreters are switching. So let's just make sure we give time. Okay.
Thank you.
This is Charity. So when we were putting together the budget, we had really hoped to try to squeeze in an in-person training, perhaps another in-person deaf advocate training, or trainings of any other topics. And unfortunately, we were not able to do so. The last time, for those of you that may not be aware, to host an in-person training with the Department of Justice, you have to put together something called a conference request form. And if I might share, it's a little bit of a painful process. And the last time we tried to do one, gosh, help me out, Liam, was it 2018, 2019, we put together one of those conference request forms? I asked Liam because he remembers everything. It was for almost $100,000, and we were not able to get that approved at the time for various reasons. So we decided this time to not include any in-person training because of really high cost, because of the conference request form, and then also we found ourselves in the moment of putting together this application dealing with COVID. So.
And this is Liam signing. Thank you, Charity. Amber posted on the chat the link to the president's budget. So do copy and paste so that you can take a look at that perhaps after this session. And just to reiterate what Charity said, between COVID restrictions and travel being suspended, as well as our shift in approach to the scope of this work, for this round of the grant anyway, we've decided not to offer anything in person. But that does not mean that nothing in person will ever be offered again, right? We are interested in collaborating and learning your thoughts and feedback in terms of the future direction of our work. Any other comments, questions, anything for the Deaf Action team? You can either chat, put your comment or question in chat, or turn your camera on.
This is Amber speaking. While we are waiting for folks who might want to chime in, I just want to be able to express and say that this opportunity for us to be able to be open and transparent, we just so greatly appreciate that. We are open to difficult questions and we want to learn and we want to be able to figure out how to make Deaf Action better moving forward, I want to make myself better. And I just wanted to name that and just be transparent about that this conversation is indeed ongoing and it's not only meant for this meeting. I think I see someone who wants to make a comment. I'll pause here. Would you like to come on screen? I'm sorry, I'm seeing the name. Is
Bonnie.
it Bonnie? Thank you. Bonnie, did you want to come on screen? Did you want to share? Bonnie, while we're waiting for Bonnie, and I believe I see Wilma, who also made a comment in the chat. For virtual advocate training, do you have to already be hired as an advocate? Or if someone is interested in becoming one, can they take that training as well? And the answer is yes. We are open and we are encouraging, certainly, of course, a diverse group of people. And I mean, we know that this is a very heavily white dominated community, and we want to make sure that we want to create the space to open this up to more folks who have a different racial and heritage background so that we can make a bigger impact in our field. So once we release the training, we can release that information, and feel free to reach out to us to be able to log in and use that training. We will definitely make that information available to any of you, and please feel free to share that with your network once we disperse that information, okay? Bonnie, just want to say your name again in case you want to make any comments. Hold on, let me spotlight you, Bonnie, okay?
Hello, everyone. Good to see most of you. It's been a long time no see. So I wanted to respond to comments that Nancy made in terms of the vision for the new organization. What I would like to see happen, if possible, is discussion or creation of a program during COVID, particularly. One thing that has really impacted my work big time is working with deaf immigrants who are, coming from other countries with often no language, no understanding of the criminal justice system here, how it works, their rights, and the list goes on and on. So that's one area. And my work, I mean, I've already had 3 separate cases in the last, I would say less than 2 months. So that's one area. The second thing, I would like to see some improvement within the court system across the country in terms of strategies, tools, something to provide interpreting for all court hearings, hearing interpreters and certified deaf interpreters. And I'll talk a little bit more about situations specifically that prompt me to say CDIs. But recently, there were 3 cases involving deaf folks. There was one case with one deaf person, a second case with 2 deaf people involved. So there were 4 interpreters needed for the second case. The first case, 2 interpreters. And then the third case was more of like a father supporting his daughter. The daughter was hearing. However, it was all on the same day. These were all on the same day. So 6 interpreters for the state of Rhode Island were needed. And the courts were at a loss. And I have to say the courts meant well. They wanted to work with us, but they were at a loss. There simply were not enough interpreters. So we need to address the a shortage of interpreters specifically for legal systems. And we know it's an ongoing issue. But my point is, how can courts do the best job that they, possible if they have all these cases with deaf folks in one day? So then that means their opportunity to have hearings, right, have to continue to be rescheduled and continued. So that's one thing, or that's the second thing. The third thing I would like to see happen, if possible, and I know we have many fabulous CDIs, we need more CDIs who can utilize other languages. So who are bilingual, trilingual in other signed languages, because many of our victims from other countries come here and do not know American Sign Language. They only know their home country's signed language. They have no idea terms such as domestic violence. They don't know their rights, even with CDIs who give interpretations. Their processes, their worldview is so different. So you can't compare their country's laws to our laws in the United States. So I would like to see, and I wish I knew who was fluent in other languages beyond American Sign Language, English, and even International Sign. Beyond that, right, there are folks from the Dominican Republic, for example. We have a huge community here in Rhode Island from Dominican Republic, and we don't have enough folks to provide access. So I wanted to just put those 3 things out there that I would love to see happen. And I don't know, maybe it will take a long time to get there, but I think it can be done with our support, our brains, our ideas. I would love to be involved and be a part of those kinds of conversations, because I see it firsthand. And I am lucky to have direct relationships with the court system and ADA coordinator here in Rhode Island. They tell us, if it wasn't for us, right, me and the other advocate, they would completely be at a loss. They would have no clue how to work with deaf folks that are in their system. And maybe the ADA coordinator here, right, other states don't have ADA coordinators that are as open as they are. So I think we could work with all ADA coordinators on how to work with deaf folks and how to be strategic in working with cases, even to make sure that not everything's scheduled on the same day or in the same time frame. So thank you. And this is Liam. Before I turn it over to Nancy, uh, or before I talk, I would like to turn it over to Nancy to talk about some projects that you've been working on.
This is Nancy. Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing those 3.
Oh, and I just needed to add a spotlight. Sorry. Okay. Yes.
This is Nancy. Bonnie, thank you so much for raising those 3 areas of great need. One thing I did want to share is that we have been talking to funders within the Office on Violence Against Women and the Office for Victims of Crime to get support and funding for a national sign language interpreter service where we would be able to use technology to connect really qualified, healing informed deaf and hearing interpreters to deaf survivors across the country, especially those survivors who are living in communities where there aren't interpreters or where interpreters aren't qualified or aren't a good match given the person or the situation. And the idea would be to be able to provide that interpretation for free to remove what is such a central barrier that deaf victims face. So we are very much advocating with funders to be able to provide a service like that. Recognizing that the goal really is that every community would have deaf advocates and that deaf survivors would be able to work directly with deaf advocates. But as we work on that, there's an immediate need for interpreters. And so I just wanted to mention that that's one project we've been trying to fundraise for.
And this is Liam. An important part of our vision moving forward, and has been actually, is the concept of language justice. How do we get better, right, in that area? And we have different ideas and different ways that we can improve, but definitely creating and holding space to expand opportunities for people to learn about trauma-informed interpreting work. That's one. Yeah, and I know Amber wanted to say something. Najma. Which I see a comment in chat. Oh, Amber's comment in chat, yes. Okay, this is Liam signing. So Amber was just in the chat emphasizing that our interpreting system is also founded on white supremacy. Yes, thank you, Amber, for naming that. And we have time for one last question or comment before we wrap up today. And Amber saying, I think Najma has a comment. Oh, Najma. Liam's recognizing Najma, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, okay, yeah, hello, hi. Perfect, thank you. When we're talking about language justice, I think Amber Met was the one who would mention it, like interpreters, yes, completely. When I sign this, I'm saying, because I don't sign white supremacy like this, because that has always been the case. That's 400 years. I mean, deaf community has been suffering from white supremacy. There's been a lot of domination there. Interpreting services, everything. Sometimes when we say, okay, when I realize that the legal system and the decision-making of what interpreters are present and certification and the like, we need to be able to use people from the deaf community who already have home languages and are using that coming from the community, because many courts are saying, well, no, they need to be certified. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Does that actually meet the need of the deaf person? Because we need to figure out a way in how to navigate the system that does not recognize it, because it's not really the interpreters that's the issue. It's the systems that establish the rules for those interpreting services to be provided. Many of us can connect to many different experiences when we talk about listening to narratives from, I mean, we need to talk about dismantling, yes, but hold. Sorry, you froze and then sped up and I missed that. Dismantling. Okay, that's what I got. Yep, dismantling. Thank you. There are many gaps in our work, right? And so when we try to envision, okay, well, we need interpreters, we need this, we need that. No, actually the root is it's smaller than that, and it's more specific. It's because it's not just, it's sign language, it's disability, it's race, and there's so many different facets. And when we think of identity, it's like, okay, well, they need all these things. Okay, well, let's look at what's really missing. And the gaps that are missing, we can't acknowledge or recognize the gaps to be able to fill that. So one way is to not do the traditional approach, and we have to do community-based services, and we have to do deaf-centric services, and that's where we'll see change. Many folks will say, I'm uncomfortable using community-based services because they'll say, well, that doesn't look professional. Well, they're not educated and they haven't gone through the academic system. But the truth is that grassroots people and community members know. We know what's up. We know what that means. We know what community and language looks like. And so when we talk about funders and their expectations and their rules and the like, we have to think about language justice, and the framework for that means we have to think about removing certain parts like interpreting and communication language. We have to, does that make sense? We have to change the way that we're talking about that need. And we have to think about it from a language justice framework.
This is Liam. Yes, thank you so much, Najma, for those comments. This definitely is a conversation that will continue. We have so much more that we want to talk about, and acknowledging limitations, and we will definitely keep this conversation going. It's important. One last comment I see KJ would like to share. Go ahead and pop your camera on, KJ. And Amber saying, I'm going to spotlight.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Journey. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I work as a project coordinator for our disability grant program. What I would really like to see more of is to have more specialized resources for people who are under specific grant programs that provide more diversity. So in this disability grant program that I'm currently in, my experience thus far has been really frustrating and a little bit of a struggle, because we're working through and with hearing agencies, and it's the first time that they've had a deaf staff member. And so they have no awareness to how to work with somebody who is deaf, to getting interpreters and access needs. My supervisor is hearing, they are struggling with how to best support a deaf staff person. And so what kind of resources do you have for that? That would be really helpful, because I'm sure there are many of us who are experiencing the same thing. And so that would be really helpful if we can talk about that. Thank you so much.
And this is Liam. Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. That, yeah, it's a very important area. Right now, Vera Institute of Justice, for example, is a TA provider for the disability grant programs. So it's something to consider is moving forward, could there be some more integration with deaf folks in the disability grant program and TA? So yes, we can consider how to be better in that area. Thank you. And I know in our Deaf Anti-Violence Project, most of us are recipients typically of 3 grant programs. It would be disability, underserved, or some folks are receiving the rural grants. So and some with sexual assault funds, some other kinds of programs, but most of them I think are in disability and underserved. So we will definitely look at how we can get better in that area. Thank you for that feedback. All right, I know we need to wrap up today's session, but please look for more opportunities and more information, more times to converse with us and our programs. Thank you to everybody for being here today.